Hey, Facebook Live, it's Greg Rand from Renter's Warehouse. How are you? Happy Friday. Thanks for being here. This is Picking Winners Live, where we invite you on to just, throw your questions out. I've got a lot of experience in real estate investing. I've done it for myself for 30 years. I've done it for a lot of clients. Literally, we counted it up one day, and literally tens of thousands of investment decisions that we've been involved in or built the technology and the logic to allow other people to make those kind of decisions. And having watched all that happen, we have a pretty good intuition on what works, and we track the results of all those decisions over years' time. And so I know something about this. I don't know like anything else. So, but I know a lot about this. So I feel very confident that if you've got a question about your real estate investing plan, your strategy, whatever tactics you're thinking about, an area you're thinking about investing. One of my favorite topics is looking at markets and what area you might want to invest in. So just throw it all at me, right? So the way to ask a question is to put your phone number in and your name. And if you want to indicate what the question is, you can. If you don't, that's okay too. I don't mind. They don't read them to me in advance. So you can just put your phone number in and we'll call you. And then you ask the question live on the show. So it's fun. And let's get started. So a couple of things. One is that last week, this is episode 3, maybe 4, episode 4. Last week, we had a bunch of people that asked questions that we couldn't get to because we keep this thing to an hour. And so there were a couple of questions that came in at the very end or after the show ended and the video continued on Facebook. And so we're going to answer some of those. We asked those folks if they wanted to come on the show and ask the question live, and so they all might. But we're going to jump in a moment with a couple of those until you have a chance to put your number in and we can talk to you live. Let me just give you the investment philosophy part of this thing. I'll try to make it fast, but I think we always get different people on here. So I want to bring everybody up to speed that it's our view that if you're the kind of person who is or plans to be a responsible adult and you want to provide for your future and your family's future and leave a legacy and wind up wealthy someday or more wealthy than you are today, which I think covers everybody, that real estate's the right way to do that. And a lot of people kind of know that built in, but they don't have the tools to really know what the facts are, meaning people know that they have a relative or a neighbor or a friend, or they're just aware. They read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. They know that accumulating property in the United States of America is a really good idea, that holding it for the rest of your life is the right way to approach it. Like flipping is great, except for the fact that you're buying an appreciating asset and then selling it before it has a chance to appreciate. And you're buying an asset that the IRS will allow your gains to be considered capital gains, much lower tax rate in most cases, except if you flip it right away, you are going to be charged a tax of ordinary income. And you don't get the depreciation. It's not meant for short-term. But there are people that have the mindset of, buying Yeezys and flipping them, or baseball cards and flipping them, or, whatever. And you can do that with houses too. But the right way to do it, the one that sets you up 10, 20, 30 years from now, legitimately wealthy and generating income, is real estate. But the industry that sells homes never treated it that way. The industry that sells homes is interested in selling you a home to live in, but don't really know anything about the home as an investment property. Most real estate agents couldn't tell you what a house would rent for, and they almost never can tell you what the yield would be. They don't even know the formula of what yield is. And of course, yield is the income, the profit you make by renting it out and then paying all your expenses, and what you keep is your cash flow. And when you compare that cash flow to what you spent to buy the place, that is your yield. I paid $100,000 for a property. I made $7,000 in profit. I have a 7% yield. Okay. You now know more than 99.9% of real estate professionals about real estate investing because you know what a yield is. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about my own personal investment program for 2019. I've done some of this research and shared it on this and my radio show and other places. In fact, Nate, do me a favor. Can we put the video, the Real Estate Road Trip version 1, in the comments? All right, Real Estate Road Trip is a show that we did on YouTube. We're doing them once a month. And it's after I do all this analysis with the data and the charts and graphs, I have to get in the car and go there, right? It's a physical asset. There's an actual place that we're going, and we travel to the place, and we drive around and pick up whatever we can in terms of the vibes and actually seeing the things that we've read about and eyeballed on the computers, and the data visualizations, but actually go out there and see it ourselves. And so we started having Nathan tag along and record it on video. And so we made a show out of it. It's like a 10 or 12-minute show, and Nate's going to put it in the comments here. So if you want to check it out, you can. But I'm going to give you an update on this thesis that I've got going in Charlotte. Looking to pull the trigger throughout the balance of this year. And in fact, I'll jump into. Have any questions yet? You'll flag when we do, right? Yeah. It's always weird doing this because you just don't know if anybody's A, going to show up, or B, going to ask any questions. So that's why we saved a few questions from before. In fact, you know what? Let's do one of the saved ones.
I recently completed my first flip, and I was thinking of getting my real estate license just to have the ability to look up the comps and see the properties. Do you have any good recommendations on if this is a good idea or not?
Okay, cool. Great question. So Melanie wants to know, if I want to be an investor, does it help to get a real estate license to get access to the MLS? That way you can see what's coming on the market the morning it does before it shows up on Zillow. You can get access to the properties by virtue of being a member of the MLS. So here's the deal. It's going to cost you $1,000 by the time you do the following. You have to join the MLS, but in order to join the MLS, in most cases, you have to join the Association of Realtors, and you have to join the State Association of Realtors, and you have to join the National Association of Realtors. So when you add all that stuff, it winds up being $1,000. So there's a cost of doing business. There's also probably a 90-hour course that you have to take. If real estate's going to be your jam for the long term, it totally makes sense to do that because you get the inside track. And of course, if you are your own agent when you go buy a property, well, then there's a 2 to 3% commission that you can collect or just take off the at the closing. So you're able to pay your closing costs out of commission if you want to. But here's a caution, and this is an important one. You talked about flipping, Melanie, and one of the things about flipping that inevitably comes to pass is that people who do it, the more serious they get about it, the more flipping deals they want to do, the more they have to go and find situations where they can buy a house in a discount, right? And so the way it kind of starts is that, you go to the bank websites, auction.com, you drive around, look for a dilapidated house that's fallen over with a for sale sign. You look in the MLS for things that are beat up. But you're going to find there's a whole lot of people who are doing those things. That's like going to the shelf in the store and picking what's on the shelf. That stuff is available to everybody. The people that want to get serious about it and repeat a lot of transactions wind up finding themselves putting advertisements out saying, I'll buy your house, I'll buy your house. Buying lists of people that are facing foreclosure. Buying lists of people that are that have tax liens against them, i.e. they own a $150,000 piece of real estate, but they're 5 years behind on their taxes for some reason, and the tax authority is actually going to foreclose on the property. And that's a great deal because that person's really screwed, but I can make a bunch of money on it. You can tell my vibe on that is that you're really circling the roadkill there, trying to get your piece of somebody's distress and pain. But let me not be on a soapbox. Here's the point. When you spend a lot of time trying to find people that are willing to sell you their house cheap, you find a lot of people that don't want to sell their house cheap. So you find somebody who says, you put a sign out, you'll go to seminars that'll tell you to do this. Put a sign out, I buy houses, fast cash, fast cash. Somebody calls you. You set up an appointment to go have coffee with them. You try to earn some trust with them. You make them an offer. They say, $150,000, this house is worth every penny at $210,000. And you're like, oh, damn, you're one of those people that actually knows about the internet. Like you're one of those people that knows that you can go on Zillow, put an address in, or Redfin, or Remax, or any website on the planet for real estate, put an address in and then see an estimated value of the property. Maybe you're somebody who pays attention to the world around you and you know your house is worth $210,000. And so the flipper just came in and told you $150,000. And then the flipper says, okay, well, that was I'll give you a visual aid here. So, okay, let me take back my I buy houses cheap card and give you my Greg Rand realtor card, and let's get that puppy on the market for $210,000. You start doing that kind of stuff and you're risking your license, all right? And you're risking a lot of fines. It is unethical as a real estate agent to tell somebody a house is worth $150,000 when the house is actually worth $210,000 and they know it. So you have a fiduciary responsibility when you do take a listing with somebody and you're dancing with the devil if you're in the process of playing the two business card game. Like one side says realtor, one side says flipper. and you're trying to figure out which one to give them, you can get yourself sued, and you probably deserve it. So if you're going to get involved in joining the MLS and becoming a realtor, pay attention to those codes of ethics, because you're going to be held to them to a certain extent. And just figure that you're going to not be able to get super duper deep discounts on properties in rapid succession. It does happen, but not all the time. So if you're going to go searching for it, be real careful. Okay, give people decent advice. If you find somebody who's willing to sell their house cheap because they have to, just be careful of telling them that my expert opinion says your house is worth $150, because if then they're carrying your business card as a realtor, they're going to say that realtor told me it was worth $150. Then they flipped it for $200 after they paid me $150, and they're a realtor. And all of a sudden now you're losing your license and maybe worse. So good. Hope that was fun for you. What else we got? Anybody type it in yet?
I'm trying to determine a market that would be turnkey friendly with cash flowing opportunities, and if it has appreciation, that's just icing on the cake. I've been seeing cities thrown out here and there, such as Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Atlanta, Dallas, Phoenix, and Houston. Has anyone had experience investing in these cities?
All right, so let's unpack that a little bit. So the first part of the question was, I want to buy properties that are going to have good income potential, but I don't care about appreciation. It is just icing on the cake. I want to address that. There are two reasons why real estate creates wealth. It generates income and it gets more valuable. And when I tell you how often I hear that analogy of icing on the cake, and it makes me want to throw up, because it is not – the reason why people say that is that people don't have a good way of predicting what the market's going to do. They don't have a historical context around what the housing market's done. So he said in two breaths, and I love it for the question, you said in two breaths, I only care about income, but this is a long-term hold. But if it's a long-term hold, you should be caring about appreciation also, because you want to get both. All right, bottom line is you want to get both. And actually, this is a perfect opportunity to show you the research center that went live just recently at renterswarehouse.com. We have for years been dealing with large Wall Street firms and a lot of professional investors on analyzing markets and figuring out how to answer exactly the question that William asked about, where should I go? Lots of options out there. And I think he threw out Oklahoma City and Cleveland. Then he threw out Phoenix and Atlanta and something else. Dallas. Okay. So you have two different kinds of markets there. And let me just give you a sense here. If I'm going to go to Cleveland, can you, Nate, look up the county in each of those places real quick for me? I know Dallas. I know Phoenix. I don't know Cleveland, and I don't know Oklahoma City off the top of my head. This tool right here is professional quality data that shows you, the first chart it shows you is the 20-year price performance for the county where the property is. And why do we do county? The reason is that a county measurement over 20 years will give you a trend line. It'll give you a curve. It's got enough data in there to give a relatively smooth line. You may be saying to yourself, what's smooth about this line right here, Greg? Well, let me explain. This is 1996 all the way through 2000 and almost 19. So this data is about 6 months old because it's got to get scrubbed up and cleaned up. But what you're seeing is the housing doing fine in the late 90s, the housing boom in the early 2000s, the housing correction, also known as meltdown or bust, but kind of in this context doesn't quite look like a meltdown, does it? It looks like a correction, and then on to an appreciation curve it goes back to. If I showed you this chart going back 80 years, it kind of looks the same except for the bump in the middle. The market has, since World War II, pretty much gone up at a steady 3 to 4%, and it's been 3.44%, you see up in the right-hand corner here, for the last 20 years nationwide, right? Now, this is really helpful because, number one, you get to see the housing crisis in context, right? A 20-year wrapper around that housing boom and bust gives you perspective that, okay, I get it. It kind of did a little bit of a heartbeat there, and now it's back to where it was headed. It also gives you a sense that what are these peaks and troughs, right? Not that smooth of a line, but you got July, you've got February, June or July, January. Okay, July, February. You getting a feeling what this means? This is just seasonality. And again, from the standpoint of being somebody who wants to understand the housing market, this data visualization helps you so much because everybody knows the spring market is hot, but how many people leave their analysis right there? There's no actionable information there. They don't say the spring market is hot and the winter market is cold, and so therefore, if you can, don't go buy in the spring, buy in the winter. But this chart makes it very clear that just look how reliable the last few years have been. So May, February, like June, July, February, boom, boom, boom. It just marches up. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that the spring market does bring the buyers out of the woodwork. It isn't just the flowers and the weather. It's also getting it done before the school year begins next year, right? So common sense. And in the winter, it's not just because it's cold, because it isn't cold everywhere, but in the winter, it's also because people are preoccupied with Thanksgiving all the way through the holidays. And so those two things keep a decent sized proportion of buyers out of the market, which means that if you're buying, you're among a thinner herd of buyers. Thereby, demand is lower that time of year, and you can get a better deal. But what's so funny about it is that if I zoom all the way in, I can't zoom far enough in to show you this, but how many times do you see in the media, you saw it this December and January, that home prices are down in November, home prices are down in January or in December, the market is crashing, and yet they don't even know that that's what happens every single year. It's an important point. I was harping on this back in January and February when the November and December numbers were getting reported, and reporters were breathlessly reporting how the market could be crashing. Boy, we really hope so. The market could be crashing because home prices in November were down from October. And then December was down from November. And January was down from December. And yet they never knew that every single year that's the case. And it's a seasonality thing. So, how does it feel to know more than the vast majority of people in the country, even the experts who report on it? You know more about them by virtue of seeing this one chart. Cuyahoga County, Ohio. There we go. All right, so where's my chart? There it is. All right, so now what you're looking at is William's first inclination of saying Cleveland is one of the markets he wants to go in where he doesn't care about appreciation. That's good because he's not really going to get any in Cleveland. Cleveland's appreciated at less than 1% over the last 20 years. All right, so Cleveland, what's happened in Cleveland? Cleveland's gone through an erosion of its manufacturing job base. Everyone knows about that. What I love about Cleveland is that the prices being this flat, the rents have gone up in Cleveland over this 20-year period, even if the prices haven't. And so the yields in Cleveland go higher because, again, yield is how much income you make, which is a derivative of your rent, compared to how much you spent. And if home prices are flat, but rental prices are climbing even gradually, there's a disparity that gets created between, and that has a way of increasing your yield. Simple as that. So, but here's what's interesting is that in Cleveland, you can very easily find a property that you can get an 8.5% yield, which is among the best in the country. And then you get 0.5% to 1% of appreciation, and you wind up at 9.5 combined. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to write down 9.5. Jot down 9.5. All right, so now you can also see seasonality is definitely a factor in Cleveland, even bigger than it is in the country and in the rest of the state. The green line is Cuyahoga County. All right, so I like Cleveland, but I really like taking Cleveland and balancing it out with something else. So let's take a look at Maricopa County, Phoenix. Now I'm going to hit the enter button. All right, very different experience there. So here, looking at here, not as much seasonality. Isn't that interesting? Why? Because it's nice in the winter in Cuyahoga County or Maricopa County. But look at the boom and the bust here. Whole different scenario. It went crazy. It got eaten alive. All right, so whenever you see crazy, what should you expect? A beatdown. Whenever you have that kind of a party, what you'd expect? You should expect a pretty heavy hangover. The market went way above the national average, came way below the national average, and then it's fought its way back. Now, two things I tell you about this. One, national average, 3.4%. County average, 4.7. So it's pushing 5, which is a big difference from 3.5. And then a real big difference from 0.5, which is what we had in Cleveland. So what you've got here is the prices have been going up, and the rents have not been keeping up. So what you're going to see in Maricopa County is instead of an 8.5% yield like you get in Cleveland, you're going to be seeing a 4% yield. Okay? But you then add this 5% appreciation rate, and you wind up something around 9%. Okay? So we'll call it 8.1 in Cleveland, 4.5 in Phoenix. So what I like about this is that if you were going to buy two houses, I love the plan of having one in each. Okay? Because they blend out to be a 6% yield, and they blend out to be like a 3 and change percent appreciation rate. But if Cleveland were to take off, which is very conceivable, Cleveland's workforce is being repurposed. manufacturing base has been rapidly repurposed from the auto industry components to medical instruments. So think doorknobs factory, door handle factory becomes scalpel factory, right? So their manufacturing jobs are coming back, their manufacturing base. The thing I love about Cleveland is the people who live there who have not left, even though it's been painful for a little bit. It's because they love it. I mean, they love it. We do a lot of social media marketing here, and the one runaway train viral success we had, such as it is, was a video about Cleveland. And we did a little bit of ad buying, a little bit of targeting in Cleveland, and our conversion went through the roof compared to everything else. I literally thought, I actually had a meeting at VaynerMedia. If you know Gary Vaynerchuk, his agency is the top social media agency. And I asked them, did I break Google and YouTube here? Because we got like 100 times the response on that. They said, no, you didn't break Google, idiot. But this is our analysis. The Midwest is very loyal to its market. And so I saw it, and I've talked to people from there that the people who are there are fiercely favorable, they're big fans of Cleveland and everything Cleveland. So Cleveland has a chance, I think, of coming off the bottom of appreciation and giving you 2, 3, 4%, maybe 2 to 3% appreciation. But if you buy now, you're getting that 8% yield. So now you're north of 9, you're up closer to 10 or 11. That's what I love about it. One more point about Phoenix is that if you look at the trend line that was very unmistakable from January 96 to July 2004 or January 2004, very, very steady trend line. If you ignore the boom and the bust and you carry it forward, look where it lands you, right where it is now. So when I hear people talk about, and you will, Phoenix is in a bubble, right? Go look up Phoenix real estate bubble and you'll see dozens of responses to that. In fact, I don't even know this to be a fact, but I have faith that my friends in the media don't know anything about real estate. So let's type in Phoenix real estate bubble. We'll see what kind of articles we get. Come on now. Housing market crash. Not looming for Metro Phoenix. That's interesting. So the first headline is housing market crash. The next word is not. So, are we headed for another bust? Okay, this is from last week. Bubble looming. Look at this. No, I don't know if you can see it on your screen over there, but I just guessed. All right, so there's my point right there. Is a bubble looming? Is a bubble looming? Well, I don't think so, because I'm looking at this data visualization and I'm seeing that if you only looked at this, you might say, oh no, this is a bubble. Look at that crazy curve. It reminds me of this crazy curve, only this crazy curve had to give it all back. And it's just been simply fighting its way back, and it's actually right on the trend line. So I would buy Phoenix, but I would only buy Phoenix if you were literally counting on the appreciation, because you're not going to get the yield. So I hope you guys like this. Comment if you do. Share it with your friends. This is all free. RentersWarehouse.com/research. You can do all this yourself. Hey, Benjamin, it's Greg Rand from Renters Warehouse. How are you?
Hey, how are you doing, Greg? I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Thanks for letting us call you. What's going on?
Hey, so my question is from my friend. We're both newbies, and he just got involved with a real estate mentorship program called Freedom Mentors. And he's telling me all the great things about it. And I got involved with it, or I called them, and they're really pushing me to join, kind of using really pushy sales tactics. But the thing is, you have to pay 15 to 25 grand up front, and they help give you this super course, help you get started, and then kind of give you this impersonal way of mentoring you through email and coaching via phone. To guiding you through your deals, but you have to split profits with them 50-50 for your first $500,000.
Okay, interesting. So let's take a look at this. So first of all, I don't know them, and so if they hear this and get mad at me for taking on the genre, it's nothing personal. Yeah. The genre of I'm going to help you get rich in real estate, but give me your first 20 grand is not something that I'm a big fan of. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean that 20 grand can go to good use. Actually buying real estate. Like I've been talking about this for a while, and I've got some friends that actually attend these things because you can get some value out of them. But it really is interesting that what they're telling you probably is that you're going to make your money back right away. because they're going to show you how to find these great deals. They're going to show you, they're going to mentor you, they're going to give you advice, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to get the advice. So here's my kind of overarching question. If you had discovered a way of like practically printing money, like let's say, better example, you're running through the park on your jog and you come across a stream, so you splash some water in your face, and there in the water you see something glimmering, right? And you reach in and it's a gold nugget. Is the first thing you do go out and tell everybody about this gold nugget that you found?
No.
Probably not. Right?
Yeah.
So you get my point, right? If there is this magical, unbelievable way of turning no money into massive wealth, the last thing that I would do is book the Holiday Inn Crowne Plaza and then teach 200 people how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So I'm not so favorable towards that. So here's what I would tell you. We're giving away all of our education. I appreciate you being here because this is part of it, right? We put a lot of video content out here on the Facebook page for Renters Warehouse, my personal page, which is GS Rand, Greg S. Rand, GS Rand on Facebook. And we got a YouTube channel by that name and an Instagram account by that name. And we give away everything we know. And we also give away all this crazy expensive data that we use for our big clients. We like realize that, hey, we own this data. We're using it for our big clients. Let's make it available to everybody so they can see this visualization stuff and they can draw conclusions on the market. Let's teach everybody everything we know. And it's not just me. I'm like a vessel through which a lot of other people are speaking right now because I've learned so much from so many other people and picked up the patterns. So I wouldn't pay for real estate education given now that there's so much education for free. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Now, did you say it was you and a friend that are like teaming up on this?
Well, yeah, we wanted to, but he went ahead. He got sold by the salesman that said, "Hey, I'm going to bring you in," and he bought into it. But I'm not that easily sold. So I was trying to negotiate with this guy and say, "Hey, let's talk about the price, talk about the return on investment, what I'm going to get, and how it's all going to play out." So they didn't try to call me and email me every single day trying to get join. Obviously, I do my research. I'm a special operations Marine getting out after 14 years, and so I always do my reconnaissance before I go ahead. So.
That's great. That's great. So your buddy already paid for it, so you kind of got a 2-for-1, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I get to see how he does, and see if he's going to grow or if he's going to decline. And I don't wish for him to decline at all.
No, of course not. Yeah, let him succeed. There's no. I would hope that there's value in the training and the coaching they're giving you. I would hope for the kind of money they're charging and half of your profits that they're actually going to deliver some really good stuff. But what you could do is you could tell them that you found this outfit called Renters Warehouse and tell them you paid $20,000 for all this training, and then give him all of our stuff, and then he'll give you all that stuff. And so now you traded $20,000 worth of Renters Warehouse training for $20,000 worth of the other company's training.
Yeah.
Where are you thinking about buying? Where do you live? What's your plan?
So currently I live in Marietta, California, which is just north of San Diego. And that's where I'm leaving the military after 14 years, and that's where I've been stationed out of San Diego, California. And I'm looking at staying in the area, so I want to invest in Temecula, Marietta, and also the San Diego County as well.
What is the county that is not San Diego, the one that's likely to maybe be a little further out from the center of the sun there? Like what's is there
So Riverside County is where I'm at, in Inland Empire.
Got it.
Yeah, so like Temecula, Marietta, Hemet, all those areas. And I know Hemet's like an opportunity zone right now.
All right, so cool. So here's what I did. I just pulled up Riverside County. It's a really, really interesting chart. Are you on the Facebook Live that you can see it right now?
Yes, I am.
Okay, cool. So again, everybody, this is free. renterswarehouse.com/research. And by the way, it's not just this one chart. It's also population change, right? So the idea of this is not complicated. This is you're tracking housing demand. And if housing demand is good, well then, if population growth is good, then housing demand is strong. So you can get even more root and say, let me see if the population is changing. Well, the population is steady as she goes in Riverside County. You can see inbound versus outbound migration in this chart. The green line are people moving in. The darker line are people moving out. And so you can see that it's been kind of steady year after year, but the most recent data we have is 2016, I'm sorry to say. But look at the difference here. It's like a big jump of inbound migration in Riverside County. Wonder why that is. It might be, so that's one of those things where it might be that it's just so expensive elsewhere. But Riverside was in between LA and San Diego. Riverside is for sure the least expensive part of that market. And so it attracted a lot of people that could afford to live there, and then it's driving prices up. Employment's great, and then job diversity is also pretty well defined here. But if I go back to the top, what's really fun about this chart is that it tells a story. So here you go again. The blue line is the U.S. Now, earlier I was showing other markets, and the scaling of the county and the state will tend to move around the blue line. So in this case, the county and the state are so high and volatile that it makes the blue line look almost flat, even though earlier that blue line had more of a rise and a fall in the middle of it. But look at the green line, and the black line is the state, right? So they track pretty well. But you had this crazy-ass boom over there where the average price in the state ended up peaking close to $500,000, all right? The county was shy of that. The county's in the low fours, took a nosedive. I mean, like, this is like a cliff coming down. And then all of a sudden it stayed flat for a few years, and then it started fighting its way back. And going back to that analysis of drawing the line from the beginning, the trend line, sort of establish that trend line, split the boom and the bust right in the middle and carry it forward. And look at that. It's right there with a little bit of upside still coming to it. Mm-hmm. Right. And that national average of 3.44 now compares to an 8.3. So this is double the national average. Yeah. And what are you thinking about doing? You buying rentals? Are you trying to flip? What's your plan?
Yeah, so my initial plan was to get into either wholesaling or flipping to just get that initial capital, and then to eventually start investing in rental properties. And long term, I want to do multifamily.
Great. So let me tell you what's I like the plan, because flipping is a great way to get going. All right, you build up a kind of a pot of gold from a few transactions. You're not trying to create a business model that you're going to be able to do 20, 30 flips a year, because that does put you in a spot where you're spending all your time trying to find distress and misery, and that wears on your soul. Mm-hmm. But finding beat up houses, are you the kind of guy that can manage contractors? Have you ever been in that business? Do you do any work yourself, or are you a hands-on type of dude?
Yeah, I'm a hands-on kind of guy. My dad, he actually was a property manager in LA, and so my goal is to link up with him and kind of just learn from him a little bit. But we don't really have a great relationship personally, but hopefully we could build that through a business relationship.
Yeah, right. Sure, man. That's that's an unfortunate thing that it would be nice to remedy, right? So if you guys start doing something together that you both concentrate on, that would be beautiful. And that's great. So that means you've got a skill in the family there that you would know when you're being BS. You'd be able to look through a house and get a feel. The best way to make the purest way to do a solid flip is basing it all on condition, meaning the house is in bad shape. That's why you're getting it cheap, period, right? The owner doesn't have the money to fix it up. The owner doesn't care. The owner's out of the area. But at the end of the day, if a $400,000 house needs $100,000 worth of work to make it perfect, you can get it for $140,000 less than that. I mean, like, you can get, if it's $400,000 and it's worth 300. I'm sorry, it needs 100. So it's not 300 plus 100 equals 400. You get that house for less than 300. You get it for $25,000 less if you're on it, and you can close quickly. And so that's a way to make equity happen out of thin air by providing a service to somebody who needs a fast transaction. But then you have to do a lot of work to make the place perfect. And so you're taking risk, and for that risk, you're getting a reward. And that's so legit that it's wonderful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And so just anything else on your mind in terms of other places that you're thinking about? Or you said you wanted to make the conversion to multifamily. How long do you think until that happens?
Yeah, and really, I have no idea how long this process takes. Obviously, that Freedom Mentor program's like, oh yeah, we're going to make these deals happen, and it's going to go. So they make it seem like it's a dream come true, and you're just going to ride this wave. However, I know just based off of my own research, going on bigger projects, going on, obviously looking at some other forums, that this is slow. It takes a lot of hard work, and it's something I have to be patient on. So I'm not really sure what the timeline would look like on that.
Yeah, well, it's a good move. And I'll tell you one thing about single family that you might find that you really like is that if you wound up over time, you accumulated 5 or 6 houses. People sometimes will do that and then want to sell them all and roll them into multifamily, because multifamily is perceived as being easier to manage. It's nice your dad's a property manager. He's got that part nailed. But the thing about the reason why I stay in single family and I haven't done multifamily is because I will sell a property to move the money into something else. Like I'm a deal junkie. And so when I see opportunities and my deals are usually not houses that are in bad shape. My deals are reading the tea leaves on, like what I'm going to talk about in a few minutes is how there's this town in North Carolina where a new light rail station just got approved. And so people are going to be commuting from there to downtown Charlotte in 12 minutes, and the value in that town is going to go up. So I'm buying everything I can that's walkable to that train station, knowing it's going to pop in value. And I'm buying the nicest houses I can because unlike you, I'm not a hands-on guy. From the standpoint of repairs and maintenance, I'm bad at that, and I admit it. So I have somebody else do the maintenance, and I buy houses that have already been repaired. And so the only way to make money when you're paying market value for nice houses is to find markets that are getting lifted off by factors like that train station. All right, cool. You see any of that kind of stuff happening in Riverside? Any parts of town that are gentrifying or new job situations being created in certain pockets in the county?
Yeah, actually, I do. There's an area just south where I'm at that you're building an extension to a college campus. So, and they're going to be building there's some new housing developments over there because obviously they're going to need some housing for some of these students that are going to be moving in. So I see that as an opportunity to invest there. That's
great. That's exactly what I mean. It's like common sense. Oh, there's going to be people moving there. They need a place to live. Let me buy houses and rent it to them. And what happens is in a place like Riverside where you're not going to get a wicked good yield, all right, because the appreciation's been so strong. But if you find a place where, like, are you talking about specifically students or just the ecosystem around the university?
Yeah, well, specifically students, but also the ecosystem around the university is gonna grow. Just anywhere they put a university, a college campus, they're gonna put big retail and other things. So
right, for sure.
Yeah.
And so what I was going to say about student housing that I find fascinating is that student housing is one of those rare situations where the person who's living there is different than the person paying the bills. Right? The parents are paying the bills usually, and the kids are living there. And when the kid says, we'd like to live in this building, the parents who are already overpaying for college, probably, right? They're like, the idea of getting an extra $60 a month for the place is very likely because they're not super price sensitive. They're not comparing a bunch of stuff. The people who are doing the comparing are comparing it based upon the walkability to the bars and the classes, and not comparing it based upon, am I getting enough, what's the price per square foot of this rental? No student asked that question. They want to know how many steps back from the row where all the clubs are. So that disconnect of the person who's actually making the decision of where to live and the person who pays the bill. And if they're late, you just send a letter home saying little Johnny's getting kicked out in the street in about 7 days, and all of a sudden the check shows up in the mail. So it's Johnny will put his head through the wall after getting drunk, and so you have some maintenance issues there. But the flip side is that you've got that other scenario in place.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, man. Hey, thanks for calling. Thanks for your service to the country, too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time and for answering the question.
All right, man. Stay in touch. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.
That was nice. Thank you. I liked that call. And if it turns out that it sounds like he's not going to go for that very expensive coaching program. And I hope he stays in touch with us because I'm happy. My email address is grand@renterswarehouse.com. And I don't coach per se, which means I don't have a coaching program, which means I wouldn't cost you anything to give me a shout now and then and ask me a question. I'm happy to answer it. So whether it be here live or just on the telephone. So cool. Anybody else live? All right. Nate is going to ask me a question from somebody who wrote in.
I just got out of the military and I'm now in a job that is 100% travel. I want to invest in Charlotte and have taken real estate investing courses. I want to do rentals or a flip. Where should I start?
Okay, cool. So he's asking about Charlotte, which is great. We just talked about that. So did you post that link? That link's going to be in there. So Nigel, do me a favor. Watch that video. It's a short show that explains what I think about Charlotte, and I'll give it to you all in a nutshell. Actually, let me do it like this. I'm just pulling up a map here so I can give you guys an idea of what I'm talking about. When you analyze an entire metro area, what I always do is I start with what is the metro doing, and it really is very, very big picture stuff. It's people moving down from the Northeast into the Carolinas. Like that's where it begins, and that is unmistakable. Then, okay, so how is Charlotte playing in that whole thing? What you normally have in these large major metros is you got a job base, and the place has got a reason for being. In the case of Charlotte, banking is the anchor in Charlotte. All right, Bank of America, which is the biggest bank in the country, is based here. The story behind that is that it was originally called Nations Bank, and it was the 47th largest bank, and it bought like the 22nd largest bank, and it became the 18th largest bank, and it bought the 12th largest bank, and it became the 6th largest bank, all the way until Nations Bank bought Bank of America, who was the biggest, and they became far and away the biggest bank in the country. Wells Fargo is, on the tail and pretty big. But anyhow, they set up shop originally in Charlotte, and so Charlotte became a major banking center. And when you have a major banking center like that, you've got a lot of pipes underground. You've got a lot of infrastructure that high finance needs, and it becomes, again, one of those ecosystems where at the center of the planet, of the solar system, is Bank of America, and then all these other planets and moons and satellites revolve around that. That's right in the middle of what we call Uptown Charlotte. And so you always get a ring around of highway, like most places do. And then as you go out from that ring, things tend to spread, but they spread at different paces, right? It's not an even spreading. It's not like dropping a pebble into the water and watching it come out evenly. They develop unevenly, okay? And so a couple of things about Charlotte. See this big lake up here? This is Lake Norman. And so where most cities have a round circle around them, Charlotte's got a pair, because there's a gravitational pull of this lake, because there's like 500 miles of coastline. There's houses built on it. It's very cool. And it draws a lot of people out of, Chicago, New York, Boston, D.C. to come down, live near a good airport, but also live on a lake, and do that far cheaper than in any of the cities that I just named. So what you've got in Charlotte is this pear-shaped ecosystem around the city. And so the trajectory north has become very expensive. The trajectory south has also become very expensive. But if you look up to the northeast, you've got Concord. And Concord was the second cheapest of the suburban markets. It's a major, I wouldn't call it a city, but it's a pretty seriously strong, well-populated center in this. So call this a planet in the solar system, right? So there's only 5 planets. There's the lake, there's Concord, there's around the bend over here in Matthews, and then down here in places like Rock Hill and what am I thinking? I forget the name. Ballantyne, right? But over here is Gastonia. And Gastonia is the last of these the last planet in the solar system to really develop. Okay, you can see it's an intersection of major highways, but it's kind of beat up, right? It's a town that saw its heyday back in the 1950s, I think, and 60s, right? And it's been eroding ever since, except for now. And what's happening in Gastonia, being cheaper than anything equidistant from the center of the core here, it is the best deal within a 30-minute drive of Charlotte, or a 40-minute drive of Charlotte. So I like it for that reason to start with, right? Because it hasn't happened yet. What's happening in Concord is going to happen in Gastonia. It just hasn't happened yet. Concord, you go down Main Street in Concord, it's all quaint little coffee shops and restaurants and shops, and people are milling around, and it's lovely, and Gastonia is making its way there. All right, so that trajectory has me excited. Then there's right here on the inside of the loop is the airport, and right next to the airport is a massive Amazon facility being built. I've got pictures of it in that video that we have in the pinned comments. And they're adding 2,500 jobs, and it's really cool because it's a massive, massive monolith with no windows, and it looks like a mall. In fact, when Nate and I were going down there filming, it looks like a mall. It's like, wait, it is a mall. You just don't go inside, right? It's a mall that they bring you your stuff. 2,500 jobs, 50 grand, 60 grand a year. A lot of renters right there. And then right in between Amazon and Gastonia is Belmont. And Belmont is where I'm going doubling down. Because in Belmont, you have this little rail line. And this rail line is now coming straight through town. This is the main street with all the little restaurants and quaintness and everything else. And right here is a train station where they are now adding light rail. And so that light rail is going to get you into Uptown Charlotte, where you can walk to the Bank of America building, go to work, and it gets you there in 15 minutes, and there's no traffic, and it's going to be beautiful. So all the real estate in this town is already very strong. It's going to get more expensive, so it's going to elevate faster than the rest of the greater Charlotte area. But if you're in Gastonia, you're a short drive to that train station. So I think between the airport or the Amazon facility by the airport, Belmont a couple of steps out, and Gastonia a couple of steps out, my investment plan is to accumulate real estate along this entire corridor right here. It's cheap down by the airport. It's cheap out in Gastonia, not quite as cheap. So like down by the airport, I could buy a house for $100,000 and get a 8% yield. Out in Gastonia, I could buy a house for $150,000 and get a 6.5% yield or a 7% yield. And down in Belmont, I'm going to spend $250,000 to $300,000 and I'm going to get a 5% yield. But I'm getting appreciation here, a little bit less appreciation, a little bit less appreciation. The blend of those three things has got me very excited. All right. And so what I'm doing right now is, to give you a sense of the way this plays out, is I've got this property. Again, another free service that we offer is you can go in and access an owner's dashboard. You go to renterswarehouse.com, go to the investor marketplace, and open a free account. What you can do when you go there then is you can create a portfolio, which I did. This portfolio is called Greg's Charlotte Investment Plan 2019. All right. And I threw 2 properties in Belmont and a property in Mooresville up by the lake that my wife found that we're taking a look at. And it's at the end of the day right now, I've got about $500,000 that I want to invest this year in Charlotte. Okay. Sold a building in New York. I sold that building in New York because it's done well, but New York is starting to go the way of, look, the taxes are out of control. Every time you open the newspaper, if there are those such a thing anymore, you see tax increases, tax increases, tax increases. People aren't paying their fair share. And at the same time, you see places like the Pacific Northwest where they're putting a lot of rent controls on landlords. That kind of thinking is going to make its way to New York. So I'm just calling it quits and I'm pulling out. I'm going to put that money to work. I'm going to use a 1031 exchange to not pay any tax on that, buy property down here. But this system allows me to add properties to what is essentially my fantasy portfolio. Okay, I add properties in, just key them in. It puts a valuation on them. Okay, it gives me a rental estimate on them. And it allows me to look at each of the 3 properties individually or as a group. So here, I go to the financials, and here's $650,000 worth of real estate. I'm only investing $500,000, so I've got to pick 2 out of 3. Right, so I've got the numbers here that show me the blended yield is 5.5%. Right, the appreciation rate is 2.5%. I think I'm going to get 3.5%. Now watch this. So my total rate of return is 8, because that's 5.5 plus 2.5. But I think I'm going to get 3.5. So I change that, and it changes my rate of return number right here to 8.5 to 9. Okay, and it shows me my projections. Here's my cash flow over 30 years. Excuse me. Here's my equity over 30 years, based upon the appreciation rate that I chose. And again, I chose to go higher than the historical average for the market because I think I found myself a pocket that's going to outperform for the reasons I just gave. I can indicate that I think my rents are going to increase. Instead of 2% a year, they're going to go 3% a year. And now my charts reshuffle to show me what my cash flow is going to be on this investment. But here's the kicker. This is all 3 houses. So I'm going to uncheck one of them. So here I've got a 5.11% net yield on this house, 6.83 on this one, 5.12. So I'm going to pick just the 2 Belmont houses. I'm going to uncheck this. Now I go back up again. Everything's reshuffled. All right. Now my yield has gone up. My rate of return is actually a little bit lower. Point is now it shuffles the deck. Now I'm 399.9 for this combo. Right. I see what my yield is. I see what my appreciation is. I can make decisions. I can throw 50 properties in here, and I can create different combinations of them to see how those different combinations perform. All right. And by that way, just like you can't add Cleveland and Riverside on this same thing. You got to pick a market, but you can have 2 different portfolios, one for Riverside, one for Cleveland, load properties in, check and uncheck things, see the way they play out, download spreadsheets from here. All the market fundamentals that I showed you earlier are sitting right here also. I know that you guys realize that as real estate investors, the services that are being offered by real estate companies are almost zero. The technology being offered by the big real estate portals is also almost nothing. But we're rapidly trying to create things that are going to make your investment strategy smoother, easier, less wrought with hassles. Actually, I take that back. Let me explain it this way. Early in your real estate, or the early part of your real estate execution, is research and planning. All right. How long do you plan on going with this? How long are you going to hold? What's your strategy? Let's research markets. Let's learn fundamentals. Let's glean what we can from the data visualization. Now let's shop properties. You can take properties you find on Zillow, drop them in here, analyze them in here. About a month and a half, we're going to have every property on Zillow on this website for you to analyze. That's not here yet, right? But now you can drop a property in, do the analysis. Once you really are confident in what you're trying to accomplish here, we've got real estate agents in Renters Warehouse that are investment specialists. So you can contact us or go through this process of contacting. Now you're having a conversation with somebody who works on my team. 200 of them nationwide, on its way to 1,000. If you're a real estate agent, by the way, and you want these tools and you want to specialize, give us a call. But we want to make the research phase exciting, interesting, engaging. We want to make the execution phase, when you acquire, confident, like you know what you're doing, you did your homework, you feel good, you're going to pull the trigger, and you're not going to worry. And then we also do property management, so you don't have to worry about the maintenance, finding tenants, collecting rent, doing accounting. We handle all that. So that's our idea of a full-service real estate investment company, starting with web portal, through real estate brokerage, all the way through property management. So if that sounds good, give us a call. All right, hey, listen, happy Friday. Thank you all for being here. I hope this was useful to you. Tell your friends. Come back next week with questions, and we'll keep this party going. Thanks for watching.